Carol Richard, one of our charter members, is going to come and share some memories for us.
I want to tell you about my Mama Goose. Yeah, I called my Mama Goose just about every week before I moved here in 1989. And my brother, John Eugene, is the one that told me about my sister Willanita calling her Tea Goose. So to me, she's my goose, and well, to my son, Grandma Goose. And Her picture is one of the many out there in the hallway, and she is wearing the blouse that I'm wearing today, which my sister got for her, and my sister's the one that got the picture. And she's only one of the many people that were very dedicated and important in getting this church started. She donated 5 acres of ground with the approval of her 4 children. We moved here in 1944 to our Corps of Engineer farm out on West Prong of Lost Creek. I was 2, my brother was 12, and my sister was 15. Then my brother Dean Allen was born in November, and he came home in a taxi cab from the Lucy Lee Hospital because our Hutmobile had quit. So we didn't have any transportation for a while. There was no church for 7 miles, and but there was service being held in the Yoakum Schoolhouse. And my sister would walk several miles through the woods, and she would meet with Hattie and Elmer Bilbrey and ride in their mule-drawn wagon to church. But in 1947, Richmond Chapel Church was built on ground that my parents donated. And my sister was in Cape Girardeau going to high school. And when I was 7 or 8, I would ride my horse with my little brother behind me. And later we got an automobile, and we could all go to church. Then later my mama got a driver's license, and she took us to church in Poplar Bluff, to the Methodist Church. Mama's parents came here from Germany, and I have their birth certificates. And logically, it rested very deeply in her heart to get a church started. And she was living alone when she got excited about working with the many people here to get the church started. And some of the people she worked very closely with are Ernest and Dolores West, and Dolores is here today, and Dorothy Brotherton and Charlie Brotherton, and Leatrice Osler, which I know none of you probably except Dorothy remember, and Viva Davis, Bob and Jackie Brown, Glenn and Mizella Green, and I called Mizella's grandson, but I think he hasn't gotten here today, and Leo and Dot Temples. And there were many more, but I just wanted to share those with you. And she was very good at keeping up with everything that was going on, happening with the church, and she liked to avoid any future planning. However, the chimes were very important to her, and with the church's approval, she did a lot to get them here. And during her final service here, when Fred Bronco mentioned the chimes, they rang. And the walking track and prayer trail are named in her memory very appropriately, because she walked 1 mile through her house in the morning for 13 years. And when I would come to visit, I would hear her walking. Currently, we're very blessed with our pastor and his family, Craig Hamilton. He's our 9th pastor. Our first pastor was Harold Farrell at the Civic Center. Then we had Fred Bronco, Jeff Estes, and Stephen Smith, and Avon Rankowski, and Pat Myers, and Sue Welborn, and we have had Catherine Bryant, and she sits here with us today. And so, it is amazing when we realize how many dedicated people our church has been blessed with. The Spirit and the love of Jesus Christ rest in our hearts. And has helped greatly get us where we are today. I thank you for sharing.
There's some photo albums back there, and I have sorted through those this week, and there's a couple in there, and then Miss West brought another one in this morning for us. So I've looked through a lot of pictures the past month and tried to put together some things. Some of this may be inaccurate. It's the best that I could do, but my version may differ a little from Carol's, so she knows more than me. She was here. So there'll be some pictures back here. So sometime in the early to mid 1980s, the pastors of the Puxico United Methodist Church, 2 consecutive pastors, wanted to explore moving into the Wappapello area with a United Methodist Church. At that time, Poplar Bluff and Sykeston formed a district of the Eastern Missouri Annual Conference, and the district superintendent, who was Paul Schlappbach, hosted a meeting in his home in Poplar Bluff to discuss the possibility of starting a United Methodist Church in Wappapello. 8 people attended this meeting: the district superintendent, the pastor of Puxico, which was John Thomas, and then 6 lay people, some of whom I think Carol mentioned. They had a second meeting at the Lake House Restaurant in Wappapello. 11 people attended that meeting, and they talked about maybe doing ministry in the park. A third meeting was held at the home of Robert and Viva Davis. And the idea of bringing in some college students who would work in creative ministry was presented. In 1983, students Myra West and Karen Wagner. Is Myra a relative? Okay. So they began holding services in the amphitheater at the lake, at the spillway, from 8 to 9 a.m. There was a 2-week vacation Bible school held at the Civic Center. In 1983, the district superintendent, the pastor of Puxico, and these 2 college students went around the lake area and surveyed to see if there was much interest in starting United Methodist Church in the area. In December of 1984, services were again held at the amphitheater for 6 weeks, led by Myra West and visiting ministers. There was again a 2-week vacation Bible school at the Civic Center. In 1985, 6 weeks again at the amphitheater. And then in September, the congregation began meeting in the Civic Center. Daryl McFarland, there they are at the Civic Center. Daryl McFarland is who I have down as the first minister of the congregation. There were 2 piano players at the Civic Center, and the average attendance was a little over 30. They started adult and children's Sunday school classes. A group would meet weekly to go out and visit area residents and invite them to church, and then they would have Bible study together. In 1986, and this was under Pastor Harold Farrell, the first baptisms were held at Davis Camp on the St. Francis River. Rummage sales and bake sales were held to raise money for the building fund. In the fall of 1986, 33 people joined the congregation. Mrs. Armstrong donated 5 acres, and that was going to be used to build the church. And that's Mrs. Armstrong and the congregation standing on this spot when it was brush. Mrs. Armstrong's father, Albert Damerow, had served as a Methodist minister to churches in South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. So on July 20th, 1987, they began drilling the well. and leveling the land. Shelton Construction was hired to construct the building. Churches and individuals from around the conference contributed to the construction. The estimated cost of this original building, which was, well, it included those rooms, and it went over to where, in this kitchen, where the serving window is. That was the original building. So I guess these were restrooms. Is that right? I know there's a shower in that one office. So that was $80,000 to build that, this much. And that included the driveway, parking areas, the water system, the septic system. And that was done with cash and a debt of $35,000. This area, the sanctuary, was a multi-purpose room. And I remember this. There were these brown chairs that are sitting around. We had the brown chairs for a meal. We'd have service, and then there's the kitchen. And then after the service, before dinner, put up chairs quickly. Put up tables. Put the chairs around those tables, and this was the fellowship hall. So this was a multi-purpose room. The first service was held in this building November 1st, 1987. So 35 years ago this weekend, and there were 46 in attendance. And that is, who's the guy next? Ernest West, okay. Over the next few years, the church hosted district meetings of the United Methodist Men and the United Methodist Women's groups. They held many dinners for the community. Esther Armstrong's funeral on January 19th, 1990 was the first funeral to be held in the church, and that was certainly appropriate after all she had done. In 1992, this wing was added on out here, a 52 by 26 wing, and a covered picnic pavilion was added over here, and there'll be pictures of that in a minute. So, this building was started in 1987. In 1992, Bishop W.T. Handy led a service to officially charter the congregation. So from 87 to 92, I guess it wasn't an official congregation until he came and chartered it and dedicated it. I'm going to go ahead and recognize our charter members. This is a paper with them, and of those here today. And you may not have been here in 1987, but Carol, Charlie and Dorothy, and their daughter Tracy, and Donna Allman. And then Miss West. You're on here, aren't you? I thought. Okay. Yeah, there she is, Dolores West. You're on there. I don't believe there's anybody else present. So we want to recognize our charter members. In the early 1990s, the church's women began distributing food baskets for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the idea of establishing a food pantry and clothes closet came out of that holiday tradition of food basket distribution. As the congregation realized there was a need to provide food year-round and clothing, not just at the holidays. So Fern Woodsmall and Viva Davis, I believe, helped lead and grow this ministry. And their picture's coming up in a minute. A separate building was built over there to house the food pantry and clothes closet in 1995. In 2002, that building was doubled in size to what we have now. Over the years, this pavilion area, which was an open-air pavilion, at least part of it, was gradually enclosed and expanded to house the clothes closet. Glow Cooley, so Fern Woodsmall and Viva Davis, and then Glow Cooley, I think, was doing the clothes closet at the time of the expansion into the pavilion, the best I could tell. So I think these three ladies were very responsible for the clothes closet. The pavilion became our kitchen and fellowship hall area for dinners and get-togethers. In 2019, these pews were purchased through contributions by many of our members. I think folks just said, hey, it'd be nice to have pews in here because we got the pavilion for dinners and we don't need to move these chairs around anymore. So I think some people just said, I'll pay for my pew, and people got together and purchased the pews. This past year, we had this generous donation that has made it possible to expand the clothes closet. Is 30 by 40, right? Addition to the clothes closet, and you'll see that later during lunch. If you haven't seen it, you're going to want to look at that. We were able to relocate the kitchen and the pavilion so that the fellowship hall area was opened up, and we weren't divided in half when we have a dinner. And the final phase of this project, you may have enjoyed this morning if you got dropped off. Of course, it wasn't raining, probably by the time most people got here. But our covered drop-off area and our new entryway. So we focused a lot on the physical church, but we all know that church is not a building, but it's a group of people who are trying to follow Christ and to be his hands and feet by serving the people of our community. So the story of this congregation is one of over 240 people who have been members of this church, who have officially joined the church during its 35-year history, and untold numbers of people who have attended without officially joining. It's the story of 13 pastors by my count. I like her number better because then I'd be number 9 instead of number 13. And I hope doesn't mean anything. But it's the story of 13 pastors who have been appointed to lead the congregation. And more importantly, it's a story of lives that have been touched and disciples who have been made of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the Lake Wappapello area and the world. So that's a little history